Hello, I'm Dianna Sinovic, and welcome to our series of readings brought to you by the Greater Lehigh Valley Writers Group. I'll be reading from my short story, Cold Front, which was published in the GLVWG anthology, GLVWG Writes Stuff. Theo dug around in the glove box and pulled out an old gas station receipt. After tapping his bitten-down pencil against the steering wheel for a few moments, he awkwardly jotted down 5 things: milk, tomatoes, chicken breast, cheese, coffee. The grocery wouldn't have been his first choice to hang out after work, but it was either that or spend yet another $20 on a dinner that left him angry, then depressed that he was eating alone. 6 weeks, 3 days, and 10 hours since Sophia dumped her mug of coffee onto his cornflakes, threw the mug on the floor so hard it dented the pergo, and walked out. Storm dog, she'd called him. All he'd said was something about the rain again. Nearly half an inch already, with 2 more inches predicted by mid-afternoon. The Delaware would be rising. He was so undone by her vehemence that he tripped over the dog and broke his wrist, landing very near the broken coffee mug. That was early June. Now his hand itched maddeningly in the cast and his head buzzed, wrapped with a band of tension that squeezed his temples with increasing pressure, a phenomenon that his doctor blamed on a hypersensitivity to barometric fluctuations, and his aunt on his rising sign, Capricorn. A storm was brewing, according to his sinuses. He sneezed twice, another symptom he knew of approaching low pressure. He got out of the pickup with an eye on the sky and walked quickly into the store. Cumulus clouds had collected along the western horizon, snuffing out the last rays of the setting sun. In the produce section, a young woman was picking through the container of locally grown tomatoes. Theo waited his turn. She looked up and shrugged with a sheepish smile. "I'm almost done," she said. "No hurry," Theo said, "but you'd better leave a few for me." His words came out with more bite than he'd meant. Damn his headache. At her startled look, he added quickly, "There's plenty. It was just a joke." "Well, bring your bag over here then, and we'll go over them together. Here's one for you." She held out a red globe as big as her fist and placed it in Theo's open bag. She had iridescent purple fingernails and a small Celtic knot tattooed on her wrist. He moved next to her, and they sorted through the bin. He felt her arm brush his as she worked, but she seemed focused on the tomatoes. When they'd finished, they both had half a dozen in their bags. "Thanks," Theo said. "My grilled chicken and salad will be better for it." She placed her tomatoes in her basket, started to turn away, then stopped. "What else is going into your salad?" Theo glanced at his scribbled list. "Mozzarella and olives. I've got olives at home, but I'm out of cheese." They started to walk together down the produce aisle. "How about yours?" "Mozzarella's good," she nodded, almost to herself. "But you absolutely cannot make a good summer salad with tomatoes if you don't have fresh basil." She frowned slightly. "I've got basil growing in several pots at home. How about you?" She looked directly at him, so unlike Sophia, who lately seemed to look anywhere else. Theo was surprised enough that he almost forgot the question. Was she flirting with him? "Basil, no, I don't have any." The woman picked up a plastic bag of basil and put it in Theo's basket. "I hope you don't mind." She smiled. "Maybe I'm being too forward." She stuck out her hand. "I'm Jenny." "Theo," he said. He stood for a moment, tongue-tied by her face, which looked nothing like Sophia's, but which held a whisper of promise. He was probably 10 years older than she was, but her openness made that seem unimportant. "Well, happy shopping, Jenny." He moved off down the aisle in search of coffee and chicken and cheese. 3 aisles over, he tried to decide which gourmet coffee he was in the mood for. Sophia liked. He shook his head. It didn't matter what she liked. She wouldn't be there to drink it. He reached for the Mexican Supreme. "That's not nearly as good as Guatemalan." Jenny was standing beside him. "You sure?" Theo felt antsy, but tried not to show it. The tomato hunt had been enjoyable, but now he just wanted to get his food and go home. He was tired, his hand ached, and he didn't feel like company. The weather migraine was picking up steam. "What about the Costa Rican?" "Guatemalan," she said emphatically. "You won't be sorry." Theo put a bag of Guatemalan in his basket. What could it hurt? It could at least end the exchange. "Thanks." He looked at his list again. "Cheese." With a nod to her, he quickly turned away to head down the aisle, but found that she had moved with him. I'm heading that way too, she said. So, do you like to cook? You seem like you must if you're picky about tomatoes. Theo was distracted by the way Jenny placed her hand on her hip. Sophia had planted herself the same way, but with anger instead of inquisitiveness, shouting that he cared more about listening to his weather radio than having a conversation with her. What was there to talk about? He'd countered. She never understood his draw to the weather. Instead, she blamed his migraines on stress and his premonitions on imagination. Thinking back, he realized that was probably the beginning of the end, but he had been too preoccupied with the start of hurricane season. Sorry, he mumbled to Jenny. What did you say? She gave him a sympathetic look. It's that hand, isn't it? Here I am blathering on about cooking, and you're worried about how you're going to cut up those tomatoes. My hand's doing okay, he said, embarrassed that she thought he was fishing for sympathy. The cast comes off tomorrow. 6 weeks for a broken bone to heal. How long for a broken relationship? Jenny finally seemed to sense his mood and moved off down the aisle in the other direction with a brief wave. In the deli section, he stopped to look at the wheel of mozzarella in the glass case. On any other day, he would have picked up a prepackaged chunk of cheese from the dairy aisle. This time, it was as though Jenny had taken control of her thoughts. He pictured her whispering, "Don't get the stuff that's already packaged. This is much better, fresher." He asked for a pound. 10 minutes later, Theo was scanning his items at the self-checkout when Jenny appeared again, this time at the kiosk next to his. She gave him a smile, but immediately switched her attention to her order. She walked out of the store just ahead of him. He expected her to turn and say something. Hadn't she done that throughout the store? But she only paused to shift her bag to the other hand and dig out her car keys. The sky had darkened to an ominous gray, and the wind was whipping the red and blue flags the grocery used on its light poles. Jenny, he said, wait. He didn't want her to just walk away. She'd meant well. I don't think I've ever enjoyed grocery shopping as much as I did just now. She laughed. That's a whopper of a line, but I'll take it at face value and say, you're welcome. She stepped off the curb. See you around, Theo. He gulped. How long had it been since he was interested in someone else, and was he? One more thing. She stopped walking. I mean, would you like to do something besides shopping? She looked out at the parking lot, not at him. A fork of lightning flashed to the south. I saw the wedding ring. You seem like a sweet guy, but I'm not getting mixed up with a married man. It's too much trouble. Theo put his bag on the sidewalk. He looked at his left hand, at the gold band. 6 weeks. She wasn't coming back, and frankly, he wasn't sure. He wanted her to. He tugged at the ring, wincing at the effort. It finally slid off, and he put it in his pants pocket. Oh, so now everything's okay. My wife left me. She never said why, Theo said. Thunder rumbled closer, and the wind whipped the flags into a frenzy. She walked out. He picked up his grocery bag and started across the lot to his truck. A few raindrops hit the pavement around him as he walked. Jenny caught up with him. I'm sorry, that's tough. A broken hand and a broken marriage. Theo walked on without speaking. His chest hurt. Taking off the ring unleashed a weariness he didn't know was there. When he reached the truck, he unlocked the passenger side and put the bag behind the seat. The spattering of raindrops increased. Jenny yelped and hugged her grocery bag to her chest. Theo climbed up on the seat and slid over. Jump in. You can wait in here until it slows down. In a moment, Jenny had her bag on the floor, the door shut, and was sitting cross-legged on the seat. The rain thundered down, drumming on the cab roof. Just in time, she said. They sat in silence, watching the water sliding down the windshield. I'm sorry about your wife, Theo, Jenny finally said. You have a lot to deal with. Does it help to talk? Theo was still staring out at the rain. His headache had finally eased, but he wasn't sure if that was because of the storm's passing or because of the peace that enveloped him. It was a sensation too long absent. Soon, maybe. Not yet. He put his keys in the ignition. The rain's slacking off. I'll drive you to your car. He put her bag in the trunk. She lowered her window and handed him a piece of paper. Jenny Fitzgerald, the slip said, along with her phone number. Call me when you want to talk. I'm a good listener. I might even buy you a cup of coffee. I will. And he meant it, as soon as he was sure of the next step. Not for the first time, he wished his sixth sense was tied to personal relationships, not foul weather. Hang on a minute, will you? He opened his glove box and felt for the small cloth bag he kept there, a present from his metaphysical aunt. Healing crystals, she called them. Here, this will keep you safe until we meet again. He dropped a violet quartz the size of a small acorn into Jenny's open palm. An amethyst! I can't believe it. She pointed to another purple crystal hanging by a crocheted strand from her rearview mirror. Thanks. It was good to wait out the storm with you. Theo watched her drive away, his hair growing damp in the lingering light rain, the thunder now only a low rumble in the distance. He stood there long after her car was no longer visible, after the rain had picked up again, his shirt and pants completely soaked, but he felt washed clean. Thank you for attending the reading. You're invited to attend the many other events that are scheduled during the Easton Book Festival. Enjoy.